Greg Gutfeld of Fox News did what he thinks is a funny and informative rant on Bernie Sanders and socialism. In reality, of course, it's a volcano of bad puns and ignorance. So let's watch, and then I'll break it down.
So the problem with Donald Trump, he's a businessman who decided to be a politician. Business teaches you to speak your mind. Politics tell you to do the opposite. In business, you sell a product. In politics, you sell yourself. Which is why Bernie Sanders is a good politician. It's all he does. He's been running for office since 1972, affording him the luxury of selling a failed ideology that never requires purchase. Socialism, a harmless thing until it finds real power, then it's deadly. For if he could, Bernie would gladly turn us into Greece, or worse, Venezuela, where toilet paper rolls are emptier than Athens ATMs. This dope once adored the Sandinistas, a toxic bunch of commies. Sanders is so nutty, most kids should be allergic to him. So why does the media overlook this? The press loves the guy because they assume his bad ideas may never see the light of day, but one can dream. He wants to raise the tax rate for top earners to more than 50%, the highest in 30 years, after the worst recovery in history. His goal is not to get America back on its feet, but to put it under for good. He wants free tuition for colleges, a great idea if you think money grows on bongs. He said he'd hire Paul Krugman for his cabinet, which is like hiring Jeffrey Dahmer as your chef. He applauded Greece's no vote, which is like applauding two lovers as they jump off a tall building, which really is socialism, a leap that always ends badly. Inevitably, you just run out of cash, just like you run out of distance between roof and sidewalk.
So at the beginning, he said, well, the problem with Donald Trump is he's a businessman. That's the problem with Donald Trump? I thought his problem was that he's an idiot. Apparently, it's just he's a businessman. It's not like he says goofy things and he's wearing a fucking ferret on his head. Of course, that's not the problem. And then he says, Bernie Sanders is selling a failed ideology. Look at Venezuela. Look at Greece. Okay. This is the oldest right-wing tripe, which never made sense, and it's repeated ad nauseum, ad infinitum, and it drives me fucking crazy. They always got to point to, look, Venezuela, Greece, Cuba, see, liberal economics failed. Soviet Union, something, they failed. So liberalism is bad. I proved it. End of conversation. You want to play that game? Let's play that game. Conservatism failed. Nazi Germany. Conservatism failed. All conservatism is like Nazi Germany. That's ridiculous, right? So why isn't it equally as ridiculous to say Greece, Venezuela, therefore socialism or liberalism failed? That doesn't make sense. Because you know what the reality is? What Bernie Sanders actually wants in America? A more Scandinavian-like system. It's funny how you didn't mention Sweden. Funny how you didn't mention Denmark. You want to know why? Because if you mentioned those places, it would have been utterly apparent if people actually bothered to look up the data that, oh yeah, wait, those places are kicking our fucking ass in almost every relevant category. The United States leads the world in very few categories. Believing in angels, defense spending, and number of people we incarcerate. That's what we're number one in. You want to look at who's number one in healthcare system. Middle-class economics. Happiness, self-reported happiness level. Virtually all in Scandinavia. They are a much more liberal system, and they're the kind of socialist that you're mocking here. So essentially what you're mocking is a system that empirically is more successful than the system that we have here in America. That's what you're doing. And then also, he just makes stuff up. Bernie Sanders wants a top tax rate of over 50%. You want to know why that's a complete lie? Because he didn't say the term marginal. Bernie Sanders does not want the government to come and take 50% of anybody's money. He doesn't. You know what a marginal tax rate is? You know what the difference is between a marginal tax rate and a regular tax rate? A regular income tax rate is the percentage of your money that the government takes. A marginal income tax is the percentage of money the government takes over a certain number. So your first $3 million or $5 million or whatever the fuck it is might be taxed at 25% or 35%. But the idea is behind a marginal rate. Okay, everything that you make over, say, $3 million, that would be taxed at 60% or 80% or whatever the fuck it is. And understand, that doesn't even include all the deductions, which would get the rate down to effectively 43%. By the way, during the golden age of economic expansion in America, we had a top marginal tax rate on the rich between 70 and 90%, and we had the most healthy economy that we've ever had. Now, remember, after all the deductions and whatnot, that effective marginal rate was more like 43%. But bottom line, there were higher taxes on the rich and we had a better economy because then we could fund infrastructure. We can fund stuff for the middle class and the poor to make the entire country better off while still allowing people to be rich. That's what Bernie Sanders is calling for. He says it's a failed ideology. Meanwhile, we had these kind of policies with FDR and the New Deal in America, and it got us out of the fucking depression, and it led to the golden age of economic expansion in our country. So how can you say it's a failed ideology? It's an ideology that works. You know what ideology has failed? Your ideology. How do I know that? Look at history. Ronald Reagan implemented the economic system you want, trickle-down economics. What happened? You had a boom-bust cycle, and deficits exploded. You know what a boom-bust cycle is? Everything takes off. Everybody's like, yay, the good times are going to last forever. Then a fucking crash right when he left office. Why? Because when you have trickle-down economics, what you're doing is you're inflating a bubble and popping the bubble. It's not real wealth creation. You're not actually, creating a better economy for everybody. And it's not just Reagan either. Everybody who's tried it, same results. George W. Bush, same thing. He tried it. He implemented trickle-down economics. Towards the end of Clinton's term, he did deregulation, which is right in line with trickle-down economics. What happened? The 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. In the roaring 20s, the 1920s, we had trickle-down economics put into place, a right-wing economic system. What happened? 1929, the stock market crash and the Great Depression. Throughout the history of the United States of America, the right-wingers come in, fuck up the economy with their proven bad economic policies, and then the liberals have to come save the day. And the entire time the liberals are saving the day, you have idiots like Greg Gutfeld screaming, you're the one with the failed system. No, you are. Look at the data. And then the final thing I'll say is, you see how ridiculous a person he is? He just mocked the idea, Bernie Sanders wants free college. Money doesn't grow on bongs. Okay, I know you're trying to be funny, but you fell flat there. And let's understand something. The idea that it's like absurd. Like, who can afford free college? Why don't you do some fucking research? Go to the brain room you have there at Fox News, which is hilarious that they call it that. And figure out, are there any places that have free college? Of course there are. Plenty of places in Europe have free college. And to not have it, I think in Germany they tried to get rid of it recently, and they immediately brought it back. They're like, oh my God, what a disastrous system when we got rid of it. Of course we should have, universal education. Why wouldn't we? It's just, we already have, government schools, public schools up till high school. Why would we not include college? There are some community colleges, for example, but why not go further? Why not have college paid for the same way that high school's paid for? That's not a radical idea by any stretch of the imagination. And again, we can't afford it. Really? We can't afford it? Then why is it we can afford this? There you go again, military spending. We dwarf everybody. Everybody. We can afford all that stuff, but we can't afford college. We can't afford to educate kids. We can afford to build all these different tanks and fucking anti-aircraft missiles and heavy weaponry and machinery, but God forbid we actually educate your kid properly. What a joke Greg Gutfeld is. You don't understand what Bernie Sanders is advocating for. You certainly don't understand socialism. And there's no way you can wrap your tiny little mind around the fact that Bernie Sanders actually represents the American people. Look at the polling data. The American people agree with him when he says, let's raise the minimum wage. They're like, yay, let's raise the marginal income tax on the rich. Yay, let's expand Social Security and Medicare. Yay, you name the issue, I'll show you the poll where the American people agree with Bernie Sanders. So in essence, when you're attacking Bernie Sanders as some sort of crazy, uneducated asshole, you're telling the American people, fuck all of you, I don't like any of you. Which basically is Fox News in a nutshell.